Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second installment of DBC's Birding Adventure series. I guess now that we have two, we can call it a series now. Uh, yeah, so tonight we got Denis Kania, spotlighted over there for you. He'll be presenting Costa Rica, as I'm sure you all know. Costa Rica, it seems like it's on just about, if you haven't been there, it seems like it's on just about everybody's to-do list if you're planning to do international birding. So Dennis has been there several times, and he's got a bunch of different information about how to visit, what to see, and all sorts of fun stuff for us. So looking forward to the presentation, and I guess without further ado, Dennis, want to take it away?
Okay, thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It hopefully will be very informative for you. We're going to cover several things tonight, and I'm going to start off with just kind of giving you some fun facts about Costa Rica, and then we'll move into um, some of the things that I do to plan a trip, so you can kind of get a feel for how you can develop your own trip. And then I'm going to talk about some of the um, ins and outs of getting through aligning things up within the country on your own. And then also I'll give you a couple of examples of some tours that Melissa and I have done in the last couple of years. We were there in 2022 and 2023, and both trips were a great success. We had a lot of fun, saw some nice birds, and it was warm when we went. So that was much better than being up here in the icy winter. So we'll start off with some of those fun facts. So it's a small country. It's only about the size of West Virginia. So that's pretty small. And when you think about how small that is and how many species have been recorded there, it's pretty amazing. So about 950 species have been seen in Costa Rica. 600 of those are resident species. So no matter when you go there, there's still really a large chunk of birds available to you. And there's quite a few that are near endemics. The between that and Panama, there's like 73 species that are endemic to that area. And then there's seven that are endemic only to Costa Rica, and only one of those is on the mainland. So it's not, the greatest spot for endemics, but it's still, it's at a location that it's, just about getting down into South America. So there's a lot of variety in species and in families. So you'll get introduced to, if you go there for your first time, you'll get introduced to a lot of families that you're not familiar with. Uh, but then there's going to be a lot that are also some things that you can relate to. But just to give you an example of some of the things that are down there, we have tinamous. There's 5 different species, and that's a very exciting group of birds to look for. We don't see them very often. We hear them more than we hear them, but it's a great group of birds to be looking for. Cuckoos you should be familiar with, and we have 13 species down there. Of course, something very important to me, hummingbirds, there's 54 species. So that's quite a long list of hummingbirds for me to chase down there. Herons, there's 20 species, owls 18, tanagers 55 species, trogons 9, toucans 6, parrots 18, tyrant flycatchers 82 species. So a lot of flycatchers for you to sort out. And then there's antbirds, 22 species, wrens 24, warblers 50. So as I said, a lot of these families are things that you're familiar with, but there will be a lot of things that will be new to you. The nice thing is about Costa Rica is they're kind of giving you things in small spoonfuls. So even though there's going to be a lot of new families, it's not each of those family representatives is it's not an extensive list for each of those families. So you're going to get introduced to things like antbirds or wood creepers, and those are things that we don't have here up in the States. So it takes a little getting used to recognizing those birds and knowing how to sort them out. But again, it's in small sample size, so it's a lot better than heading down into South America where you could be just inundated with families that you're unfamiliar with, and then large groupings within each of those families. So just to give you an idea of Costa Rica, here's a nice map, and it shows that this map is showing all the national parks that are in the country. And in addition to those national parks, there's also a lot of private reserves. So many birding opportunities all through the country. And, those are just major places to go. You can bird just about anywhere. Wherever your lodging is, there's going to be probably opportunities to bird. Wherever there's a road, you can always walk down a road, and it's amazing. So the birds don't just hide out in these national parks or in the private reserves. They're all over the place. And that's a good thing to keep in mind, no matter where you are, especially if it's a family vacation and not dedicated a birding trip. It's nice to know that as the family heads down to the beach, there's probably a little trail or a little road you can walk down and pick up some birds. So one of the first things I wanted to cover, as far as logistics, would be getting around. And so there's several ways to approach this. And one of the ways that many people do utilize is to go with one of the large birding tour companies. So if you go that route, it's a little more expensive, but then they're going to take care of everything for you. They line up your lodging. You don't have to wonder where you're going to go eat, and you don't have to worry about how you're getting from point A to B. So all those things are great. And it's well worth it, having a dedicated guide the whole time that you're out. So another thing that you could do is you can go the route of just using a local travel agency. And there are companies down in Costa Rica that have like a suite of lodges that they work with. And so the problem with taking this route is that you're going to be in one of those um, preferred country lodges. So you're not picking and choosing where you're staying. And usually those are all high-end kind of places too. So that is a little distressing as well. So you could go that route, but you have to understand that they're going to be picking the places, but they will get you from point A to point B. That's all part of their package they would be putting together for you. I did a trip like that one time, and that was to get down to the Osa Peninsula. And the reason I took that approach was because we had to get a flight down into the peninsula area in order to get to this lodge. And so I let a travel agent down there in Costa Rica, work all the details out for me. And that probably would have gone pretty well, except for the fact that there were three of us. It was my wife and I and my son. And when we got down to the little airstrip we were going to fly on to get down to the Osa Peninsula, they only had listed 2 tickets for us. So that kind of presented a problem. So if you do go this route, make sure that you make sure all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted because they might not. But enough on that. You could also drive yourself. That's another option, and I know people have done that. I've done that. My very first trip to Costa Rica, that was what we did. Um, it can be a great way to get around because then you're in control of when you're going and where you're going all the time. And it's nice that you can plan your days that way. But when you're doing that, there is some confusion and frustration that comes along with that because the roads signage is terrible in the country. Nowadays, you do have GPS, so that probably solves some of the problems. But the local drivers are going to know all the shortcuts, and they can save you a lot of time. When you're renting a car, you have to think about the fact that it's not just, okay, that's going to be cheaper than some of these other options because you do have to think in terms of the insurance you're going to have to get, the rental fee itself, and then all the fuel. So it does add up pretty quickly. So the last option that I have listed here is to contract with a countrywide transportation company. And we've found a great one that we've used the last couple of years. It's called Costa Rica Driver and Adventure. We found them to be very reliable. I think they're not ridiculously priced. They're friendly. And in fact, the owner is a birder. And I've met him several times, and he's actually been our driver several times. So if you were to want to contact them, here's their WhatsApp number. I have it listed here. And just so you know, everybody in Costa Rica uses WhatsApp. So it's a great way to communicate. You can use it as texting, or you can actually call and talk to them like you would on a regular phone line. So lots of options for you. I think somebody is not muted. So if you could check and double check, make sure you're muted, I'd appreciate that. Um, so let's talk a little bit about lodging. When I first went down there in 1994, um, the only information I had on lodging for the country was a tour pamphlet I had picked up and then a copy of The Lonely Planet. And so for every area of the country in the Lonely Planet, they kind of had a listing of preferred lodges that you could contact. And so I contacted all those places via fax, and it took forever to arrange that first trip. And we were there for 3 weeks, so we were moving around quite a bit, and it was very confusing. So it's a lot simpler now, fortunately. So when you go on the internet, you can find all sorts of information. You can pick and choose, you can read a lot of reviews, and you can really find out a lot of information about the places you're going or where you want to stay. So when I'm picking places, I do it based primarily, at least the areas we're going to go to are primarily based on what birds I'm looking for. And then Melissa usually takes over and she'll find the lodging that she approves of. But I have a final say in that as well because if we're going to be traveling around with somebody transporting us, and that, it's not the cheapest thing in the world. So if we're going to go someplace, I want to make sure we're going to stay there for a few days to make it worthwhile. And in order to stay there for a few days, you want to make sure that the property is large enough that they have their own trail system. So that's a big plus because even if you're going to hire a guide, here or there on various days, you still want to be able to entertain yourself on all the other days. And so as long as there's some trails nearby, we can enjoy ourselves. We do a lot of hiking. And it's not just the birds, it's all sorts of wildlife in addition to that. So you never know what you'll find if you get off the beaten track and go down some trails. So that's kind of how I approach lodging, is to make sure that they do have access to outside areas that you can enjoy. So another thing to give some consideration to is local guides. And I've used a few local guides over the years. One in particular stands out, and that's Patrick O'Donnell. He's a New Yorker, but he's lived down in Costa Rica for many years. And he can probably guide just about anywhere in the country. And he probably, if he can't do it, he can probably tell you someone who can. So you can probably get a lead from him. And the easiest way to contact him is through this email address, information@birdingcraft.com. And really a nice guy. Like I said, I've used him a couple times. He's been very helpful, even on occasions when he couldn't guide for me. Up in the northwestern part of the country, which is the Guanacaste province, there's a fellow named David Vargas that I used one time when I was up in that area. Very knowledgeable. His enthusiasm overwhelmed me. I had to tell him to stop because he just wore Melissa and I out. He just wanted to go bird, 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 which is great. It's a wonderful thing. So his WhatsApp number is listed here as well. And as I said earlier, everyone uses WhatsApp in Costa Rica. Another good guide up in the north that I've used is his name is Jorge Soto, and there's his WhatsApp number. And I'll let you know when we get to the point where I was utilizing these guides. I'll remind you of the locations where I use them. And I've also had good luck actually just lining up guides through the lodges. Just make sure that you make it clear to them that you really want a birding guide. But most of the guides, if they're naturalists at all, they're going to know the birds and they're going to know the local birds and where to find them. So the picture here, this local guide, you can see doesn't even have any binoculars, but he certainly knew the birds. He knew the bird calls and recognized birds, even though that was not his forte. So we actually hired him for a day up in the Rincon de la Veja National Park. It's a volcanic park. And we wanted to just do some fun stuff and hike to some waterfalls. And so he assisted us with that. So that was great. And we saw birds along the way. So then I also wanted to kind of briefly talk about safety and traveling smart. And no matter what country you are in, there's going to be bad actors. Believe it or not, it's even, there's some dicey places here in Illinois. So I found people in Costa Rica to be very friendly and helpful, but you never know what you're going to run into. So what I like to do is I like to make sure that I have a plan. I know where I'm going, I know how I'm getting there, and I know where I'm staying. And it's good to keep all of that in mind so that when you are traveling, whether it's Costa Rica or anywhere else, you don't want to be just standing out there trying to figure things out on the get-go. You want to already have a plan in place, and that's going to save you from getting into a lot of trouble. Um, Most of the places, if we're birding, we're going to be in eco lodges or places that are well off the beaten trail. So you really shouldn't run into any kind of problems. Even in the cities, I really haven't had problems. So keeping that in mind, when I do line up lodging, it's nice to know that they have a gate that they lock at night and that they have somebody walking around 24/7. So, having this extra security is a great thing. I know some people that have rented houses to spend time more extended stays. And I think that, it's a great way to save some money, but you are kind of locked down into one area unless you have a car and can move around a lot. But I've heard stories where a couple of those people have had issues where, they go out to dinner and they come back and, somebody has broken into the house. And so those rental places are kind of like targets or can be. And I'm not saying that's always going to happen to you, but it can happen to you. I've known of a couple of occurrences where it's happened. One time it actually happened while the people were in the home and were asleep, and somebody broke in and stole all their computerware and everything out of the common room. So keep that in the back of your mind that it's a safe place to travel, but like I said, there's bad actors everywhere. So money matters. Credit cards work most everywhere in Costa Rica. The U.S. dollar is accepted just about everywhere in Costa Rica. You can use the local currency if you prefer, and you can easily exchange that at the airport as you come in. It might not be the best rate, but it's the most convenient way to get your money. So just coming to the airport, and currently it's 500 Costa Rican colones to one US dollar. So of course, they actually do like getting US dollars because they fit in the wallet a lot better. So here's the field guide that I've used on my last couple trips. That might be something that you'd want to keep in the back of your mind. What kind of field guides are you going to use? This is a nice, convenient guide. It's relatively new. I can't remember what year it was published, but it's pretty well up to date as far as the species names. And it's a nice travel size. It's about the size of Eastern North America Sibley guide. So it's not terribly large. Easy to pack, easy to take with you whenever you're out in the field if you so desire to have a field guide with you. So now it's up to planning your trip and how are we gonna make those plans? So one of the things that you could do, this is a map of a tour that Field Guides does. And I do a lot of trips. A lot of my international trips are done through Field Guides when I'm doing the organized ones, as opposed to a family one, like I'm talking to you about tonight. And so I'll go and look at, see where Field Guides is going, and I'll look at where Wings is going. I'll look and see where Vent is going, just to see where the hot spots are that they have on the routes for their itineraries. So I actually did run this itinerary with Field Guides back in 2014, and it's actually broken up into two parts, so you could do two short trips if you so desired. But we did it all in one trip. So here's part one, here's part two, and we covered the length of the country basically. So this one in particular is called Birding the Edges of Costa Rica. So, at least then well, maybe I should look into Arenal Observatory Lodge, and maybe I should look into San Isidro or Wilson Botanic Gardens. But, check all those places out and see if those are of interest to you. Here's another tour that Field Guides does. And this one stays more in the center of the country, but I've been to all of these locations on various trips of my own. I did not run this tour with them, but I have been to all of these places. The very first time we went to Costa Rica, we went up into the Monteverde Cloud Forest because that was one of the real hot spots at that time. We went into Barrillo Carrillo National Park, and when we came down on the coast here on that first trip, and we did some time in Manuel Antonio National Park. But on the way there, we went through Tapantí, so we were in that area. We've been just about everywhere here. We've been Caracal a couple of times now, 3 times, I think. Uh, so again, you can at least get some ideas on locations that if the tour companies are going there, maybe you need to look into it and see what's the reason that they're going there. And so Costa Rica is a very big birding destination. It's great for first-time birders or returners, just like myself. I've been there 5, 6 times now. But you can see this is on eBird, and you can see there's lots and lots of hotspots all over the country. So you can see there's a lot going on. There's a lot of data there for you to drill down into and find out or figure out where you want to go. So in the case of one of the conversations we're having tonight about one of the trips I planned, we're going to kind of zero in on this area up here. So this is the northwest corner of Costa Rica. This is that Guanacaste province, which is a very dry province. So we're going to zero in on that a little bit. And Okay, after doing some research and seeing where some of the key birds that I was looking for, where they're located, I found that some of them are in this area. And so I started researching and I decided that we needed to stay at Hacienda Guachapelin, which is right here. Hopefully you can see my cursor. Alice, if you can see my cursor, please nod. Thank you. And then here's the national park. This is Rincon de la Veja. So it's a volcanic park, and this is the southwest entrance into the park. So this is where there's a headquarters. The interesting thing is the only way into this park, because these other access points are closed now, the only way into this park is actually through the Guachapelin property. So it's a 900-acre ranch, and you have to actually travel through that to get into the national park. But both of these are hot spots then that you can click on, and you can see, what birds are around. And so that's what I'm representing here. So I've done for Hacienda Guachapelin, I've actually hit that hot spot on the map. And I pulled up the details for that. And so this is their bar chart. And I've just kind of clipped out portions of the bar chart just so I can give you some examples. So no matter what time of the year you're going, by taking this approach, you know what birds are going to be available. So we were going in January, so I'm not really thinking too much about great tinamou, but I imagine people haven't seen them in January, but tinamous are things that are going to be around there probably year round. So it's just that no one's seen one there. But the one that I'm really interested in finding is thicket tinamou. And so I can see that it is well represented. People are finding that bird in January. Lesser ground cuckoo is another key bird for me, and I can see that in January it's available. Another bird that's really available is a squirrel cuckoo. It wasn't something that was a target for me, but it certainly is available. Another bird that was a target for me is a yellow-eared toucanet, and it's also not showing anything for January, but we do have the very first quarter of February it's been seen. But it looks like it's usually in the first half of the, or first third of the year is when people are finding it. So maybe we'll get lucky, we'll see. Keel-billed toucan is certainly available. Hoffman's woodpecker, really abundant, and it's seen all year round, and you can see how thick those bars are, so people are always running into that. So you can do this for every single hotspot that you decide that you want to go to. So you kind of figure out your route, and then for each one of those areas they're going to be staying in, you can see on the eBird map what hotspots are close by or actually at the place where you're staying. And then you can pull up these bar charts and see what's available. And so the next step is to take all that information as you're gleaning it from those bar charts. You can start to build a spreadsheet, and that's what I do for every trip, whether it's my international trips with my touring groups or whether it's a family trip. I'll take the time to actually build a spreadsheet like this, and then for each location. Now this was not the 2020 or 2022 trip. This is actually the 2023 trip. So these names are not going to match up with what I was just showing you on eBird. But you can see that we're going to go to the La Paz waterfall gardens. We're going to go to Tirabina Rainforest Center. We're going to go to Hotel Quelatales. We're going up to Savegre. So you can see everything's listed here. And so there's a column for every one of those hotspots that we're going to be visiting. And I can now register within each of these columns what species are going to be available. So I take this with me because not only is it going to be helpful to plan each day, in the evening before I'm going to go out the next day, I can look at this list and go down that column and say, oh, okay, I'm kind of unfamiliar with what gray-headed chachalaca looks like, so I can go ahead and look that up in the field guide. But what's nice is then I can just throw a bunch of columns out here, one for every day. So this now also becomes my checklist. So I can actually check things off as I see them on the tour. And then when I go home, I've got all that information. I can easily enter that into whatever database that I want to utilize. So here's an example of one of the tours that we did. This is the one that we did in 2022, and it was just a 2-week trip, just enough to kind of get out of the cold a little bit. And we flew into San Jose, which is right here. And then we went to La Ensenada Lodge, again, being picked up by Costa Rica drivers. And they picked us up at our hotel, the Hampton, and took us out to this property here, which once again, it's a 900-acre ranch, gated. And it's not on the beaten track for most people. It looks like astronomers use it a lot. Bird tours do go through here, but no, I don't think any of the big ones go through here. But we stayed here a couple of nights, Normally I like to stay longer, but Melissa didn't like the looks of the lodging, so we didn't stay there very long. So we planned only for 2 days, and then from there we got picked up again by Costa Rica drivers, and then we were driven up here to Hotel Hacienda Huachapelin, which is again right outside the national park. So we spent 4 days there because it looked like they really had a lot to do. There were great trails. You have access to the national park right there, so you can go and do trails in there. We did hire a guide, a local guide, so we had him for one full day. And then through the lodge, we actually arranged a couple different hikes as well. So, so we had a lot of activities that we were able to do there, and so we stayed there for 4 days. From there, we moved on to Heliconia's Rainforest Lodge, and again, that's right next to another national park. So we spent 3 nights there. Then we went to Arenal. And we spent another 3 nights there. There's plenty to do in that area. It's much more touristy area. Just about everybody that goes to Costa Rica is going to go see Arenal. So lots of things to do there in addition to birding. And then we made our way back to San Jose. So it was a 2-week trip, nice and concise, and we'll now go into a little more detail on that. So here's La Ensenada Lodge. It looks pretty nice. It's a little worn around the edges, but it was comfortable. Nice big room. We had hot and cold running water. The meals here in the restaurant area were great. So it was a decent place to stay. I enjoyed the stay there. What was nice was that right outside our room, we had a couple of Pacific screech owls that showed up. And so just about everybody that was at the lodge, I invited them onto our porch so they could all come in and see these owls. I'm always, trying to share birds as much as possible. And I said the food was good. Well, here's a good example. Here's a white-throated magpie jay, and he decided that he wanted to have some of our pineapple that we had as dessert at lunchtime. So he kind of was picking through that, and then he decided he didn't like our company apparently. So he takes the rest of it and just kind of takes off with it. And so I thought that was all pretty funny. So while we were there, the main reason for going here was to look for the mangrove hummingbird. That was the main target, but also there's a possibility at this site for thicket tinamou, which was on my list to see birds, and also that lesser ground cuckoo. We struck out on everything. When we went out on the boat ride out into the mangroves, the boatman didn't speak any English, which was not a problem at all. He knew exactly what I wanted. And so he took us to places where he knows that that hummingbird hangs out, but it was a no-show, so we missed out on that. But then a couple of these birds that I have listed here, the lineated woodpecker, the white-tipped dove, these photos actually were taken while I was sitting at that lunch table where the magpie jay was. So, I mean, the birds are right there. You don't have to do anything to find the birds. The ringed kingfisher that was out on the boat ride. We had many, many birds out there on the ride. I'd be showing you bird pictures all night long here. We'd be wrapping up around midnight if I did that. So I just picked and chose a few things. Out in the more pastoral areas, double striped thickney was readily available, so that was a nice bird to pick up. But then it was time to move on, and when we moved on, we went to Hacienda Guachapelin. And this is a place that I planned to stay for 4 nights. We had arranged, I tracked down David Vargas, and the way I found him was actually through eBird. Back in the day, you could hit on the eBird um, daily sighting log, and whoever was reporting it, there was actually a link to their profile. And if they so chose, they could put stuff in that profile and talk about, their birding experiences or whatever. And sometimes some of these people would say, I'm willing to guide. Well, they don't seem to have that anymore. I was looking for that just before this program so that I could kind of show you how to go about doing that. And it seems like they're not listing the profiles anymore. So that's unfortunate because that was a great way to find people. And the one fellow I did find, his name was David Vargas, and he was fantastic. I've told a couple other people to use him. At least one has been successful in lining him up, and they were very, very pleased as well. So this being a location that had so many different activities, it's great if you're going on a trip that's not really a dedicated birding trip, the family wants to go someplace fun, well, this would be a great place. You can still get a lot of great birding in, and they can all have a lot of fun too, because there's a lot of activities here. Again, it's a 900-acre ranch again, um, and it's gated, and they just have activities all over the place. There's a shuttle bus that takes people to all the different activity locations, and they'll actually take you to the entrance into the national park as well. So they have horseback riding there, they have bike riding, they have zip lining, they have river rafting, they have thermal hot spots to go to, they have mud bath places. You can go to everything under the sun. They have it all here. And then if you're a little more laid back, there's a pool as well. So it's a great place to visit with a family, and lots of birds right at your doorstep. Right where Melissa's standing there, we had like a little courtyard right in front of our room, and we had parakeets in that little courtyard every evening that we were there. Parrots would fly in at dusk. There'd be parrots all over the place. So it's a very interesting place to hang out for birders and non-birders as well. So that's why we were there for 4 nights. So here's the room. You can see that it looks very comfortable. It was very, very nice. We enjoyed our stay here. So we went out with David Vargas. He came in very early in the morning, and we started out, did a lot of hiking around. And here's one of the birds that I was kind of disappointed. I didn't think I was going to have a crack at this one, but here it is. So this is the yellow-eared toucanet. And we just got lucky, and one was down out of the canopy. Usually they're up in the treetops more. It's a particular species that does hang higher. But this one was down low, and David spotted it, and I was happy to look at it and photograph it. Here's one of my big targets. This is probably one of the biggest targets of the trip, and this is the lesser ground cuckoo. You're going to get to see David in a second here, because he must have hit a button and reversed the screen on the phone he was using for digiscoping. So that's our lesser ground cuckoo. There he was. That was David. And that's the bird. So fantastic bird. He was quite confident we were going to get this bird, and sure enough, we did. Um, there it is in a still photo, so you can get a better look at it. So that's lesser ground cuckoo. One of my other huge targets for this area was the thicket tinamou, and I actually got it the day before David joined us, but we then went searching for it so Melissa could get it as well, and we found that along the same road where the lesser ground cuckoo was. What's nice about the property and the national park both is that there's really a lot of nice scenic places to go on the properties. And so there's trails all over. You can hike to your heart's content. And so we did a lot of that, and birding along the way, of course. So this particular pair of waterfalls is actually on the Guachipaline property, not in the national park. We did hike to some waterfalls in the national park as well, and those were fantastic. Really nice hikes, and then very scenic once we got there. Some of the trails in the national park are not hiker friendly. You can see that this is a pretty rough trail to go through. But it's open enough, and you can, as long as you watch your step, you can get through. So very nice places to go visit though. There's a couple major trails within the national park. One heads off into the west, I believe, which would get you to some of the really neat waterfalls. And then there's another loop trail you can do that goes to the east. And that one takes you past a lot of thermal features. So it's like a miniature Yellowstone. So there's lots of fumaroles, there's mud pools that are bubbling, things like that. So no geysers, but still a lot of geothermal features. So it was kind of fun. When we were hiking in there, we actually had a boa go across the trail in front of us. And then a friend of mine who also used David Vargas on a trip after mine, they actually had a tapir when they were hiking on one of the trails. So a lot of cool wildlife in there. So it was time to leave Guachipaline, and we were going to then head to our next lodging. And on the way, we had talked to Costa Rica drivers about adding a little side trip in. And so they took us to a rafting place that we could do a float trip on the Tenorio River. And that turned out to be a great experience. And that's one of the really nice things about using that company is that they're not just drivers, it's actually a naturalist company. So they can organize all sorts of opportunities for you. So they actually brought us to the launch point where we were getting into our raft. And then They were waiting for us at the other end, so we got picked up right away. No muss, no fuss. And that's all just part of the package. They include something extra for the excursion, but you don't have to arrange anything. You just tell them what you want to do. So it turned out to be a great opportunity. This is probably the best picture I've ever been able to get of a boat-billed heron. Usually they're tucked in really deep and you can't get a good look at them. And this one you can actually just see just how wide that bill is. So I was quite pleased with that. And then we made another little stop before we got to our lodge. This was Leo, the owner of the company, was driving us this day, and I mean, the guy's just amazing. And once I found out he was a birder, we had plenty to talk about. But on our way, he said he was asking if we'd seen any sloths yet. So shortly after he asked that, he started searching for sloths. And next thing you know, we were stopping on the roadside. And so we actually got both sloths in one place. We had a three-toed and a two-toed sloth each, one of each. Well, that was kind of cool. So here we finally made it to Heliconius Rainforest Lodge. And this is just on the outskirts of Tenorio Volcano National Park. So we were here for 3 nights. Again, it's a place that I made sure that it had hiking trails available to us. And it did have hiking trails. I did find an outside guide. This is where I birded with Jorge Soto. And I arranged for him to go do a day hike with us, just birding on the property and anywhere else that he felt we should go to get some of our target birds. And then we also asked the lodge to line up a couple of trips for us. And so they did one. We wanted to do one that was a night hike. And then we also wanted to do one to go actually into the national park. So we're sitting there having dinner our first night and wrapping up dinner. And our guide for the night hike was supposed to be showing up. And who walks in through the door but Jorge. So that was great because I was going to be birding with him. It was nice to make that connection, the night before. And it turned out that he was also the guide for us when we went into the national park. So we actually had him for 3 days, 2 nights, I guess 1 night, and then the 2 day trips. And so that was pretty nice. There was some continuity because it was the same guide, but he's looking to do, for work. So not only is he doing stuff on the side, but he's also, incorporating things through the lodge. So you can kind of count on the lodges are finding reputable people when they're lining up guides for you. So that's a nice thing to know. We enjoyed our stay here. Again, very basic, but very comfortable. All I really care about is that there's nothing crawling in the bed besides Melissa, and that we get hot and cold running water. That's really all I'm looking for in a room. So, so all the places that we stayed, they all fit the bill. So we had a really nice stay here. What's really nice about the property, they do have their own hiking trails, but they also have a series of their own suspension bridges. And I think there's about 7 bridges on the property. And what's nice is the only people that are utilizing them are people that are staying there. And we basically did not see anyone else on these suspension bridges when we were out there birding, which means, it's quiet. You don't have the bridge, bouncing all over the place when you're trying to look at something because there's just no one else there. So we did a fair amount of birding right off these bridges, which was wonderful. And then again, we went into the national park as well, did some hiking in there. We didn't do extremely well on our targets, but I had really a very, very tough list of targets for this particular national park and for this lodge. So collared araceli at a feeding platform. And that's the nice thing. Most of these eco lodges are always going to have some kind of feeding platforms available. So there'll be a lot of people coming in and seeing, the birds that are there. Very easy way to get some of the birds. But so some of my difficult targets included 3 quail doves. Quail doves are always really tough. Wood quail, there were 2 of those I was looking for. Those were also very, very tough. And we did manage to get some good looks at black-breasted wood quail. This is not my photograph. Usually if you see a white frame around the picture, then it's probably I borrowed that from Wikipedia. So we can thank this person here. Can't read it sideways, but anyway, that's who took this photograph. It was a great bird to get. Again, not easy birds to see in the forest. You're in deep forest when you're looking for these birds usually. So after we finished our time up at Heliconius, then our next stop was going to be Arenal Observatory Lodge, and again 3 nights because we knew there were a lot of activities there. They do have extensive trails. I've been here in the past, so I knew that we could count on the fact there'd be plenty to keep us busy. And in spite of that, we still lined up a couple of hikes through the lodge. Well, yeah, I guess we just one. We did one bird hike with them, and then I did hire in a local guide to take us to off-site to another location to do some birding where I had heard reports of some really good birds that we needed to chase after, that being a long-wattled umbrella bird and um, rufous vented ground cuckoo, two birds that are near impossible to see, and we didn't see them. But Arenal is a really nice place, more upscale, very nice room. You can see this is just the entryway. Here, this is the dining area here. Off of the dining area, they have a very nice viewing platform so you can see the volcano. And then just off of the platform, they also have a nice feeding station. There's the volcano. It's currently sleeping, so not a lot of activity. The very first time I saw this volcano, we actually saw red hot projectiles coming out in the nighttime. You could see the glowing embers. I'm sure they're very large, but they're coming out of the mountaintop and cascading down the sides of the mountain. So nothing like that on this trip. They do have a frog pond that you can sign up for a tour, or after you've walked the trail system enough, you know where that is, and you can just go there on your own and find the frogs yourself. We actually had several species of frogs when we went down and visited that on our own. Here's that feeding station. So they actually lower this down every day and they load it up with, melons and whatnot. And then it's on a pulley system, so they hoist it back up. Now it's at the level of that viewing platform that we saw. And you can see all the big guys move in right away. So we've got a lot of oropendulas here, several of them. We have a bunch of Araceres. Here's one here, another there. Looks like one there. And we even had some of the big cracids in here. So here's a crested guan. Here's the female curassow. So really big birds. They really polish things off pretty quickly. There's the Montezuma oropendula standing out on its own. But then after all the big birds are done, then all the little guys come in and take the little nibblings that are left. So this is an emerald tanager, golden hooded tanager. Great birds, great views. Everything's just right in front of you. These are green honey creepers. This is the male and this is the female. So again, great birds. But you can see that these rinds are picked clean. There's really nothing left on these things. So they don't let anything go to waste. Here's a brown jay. So this is a great curassow. This is the male. And he was, by this time he was down on the ground. And then here's the female. And I think she's quite striking compared to the male. I really think that's a cool looking bird. And then here's the crested guan. So again, all these birds were they were up in that feeding tower and gobbling things up. So when we did do some of the hiking on the property, we did come across quite a few birds. I don't have a lot of pictures, but laughing falcon was one that kind of stood out in my mind, so I included that here. We did do that day trip where we left Arenal Observatory Lodge property and we went off to go to the Children's Eternal Rainforest because there were some really good sightings that had been reported from that area very recently. So I wanted to go give it a try to see those birds. One thing that I did get, which I've seen before, but I've never seen them as well as this, and that's hook-billed kite. And we had quite a few in there, which surprised me, and they were in different morphs. So we got to see a couple different plumages of these birds. Real white ones like this, real dark ones, just really different. So that was kind of fun. On the way in there, we did have white hawk, which is a nice bird to see. So that's after we finished up at Arenal, then we made our way back to San Jose, and we spent the last night at the Hampton, and then flew home the next day. So here we are now. We had so much fun during 2 weeks. We thought, well, let's do 3 weeks in 2023 because we can have 50% more fun. So again, we flew into San Jose. This time we headed east and we went to Tirambina Rainforest Lodge. So we spent 3 nights there. On the way there, we made a couple of stops, and I'll get into that in a minute. From there, we went up to La Selva Biological Station. So this is more of a research station. I was expecting things to be pretty bare bones there. I was actually surprised at the lodging and the food that we had there. So that was kind of nice, actually. We were joined by some friends who were also in Costa Rica, and we planned to at least have our trips overlap at these two locations. That was the Strikers, and you'll see them in a little bit. Uh, After we parted ways with the Strikers, then we moved on. We went to Hotel Cayetales, which is a little further south. You're higher up in elevation at this point. I was going there because a lot of hummingbird targets for me at this particular location. From there, we went up to Savegre, some more targets up in this area. And this is just a wonderful area to be in. This is some of the highest areas of Costa Rica that you can be in. The mountain range here is actually the highest range. The lodge itself is not at the highest point, but you're still way up there. So it's actually cold at night when you get up there. When you get down to the coast again, we're on the Pacific side here, and we went to Dominical, which is more or less kind of like a surfer's paradise. So it's a different kind of a place that Melissa and I don't normally stay at. But it was nice, it was comfortable. The lodging that we had picked out was actually just a 15-minute, no, not even 15-minute walk to get to the actual town. So that was pretty convenient for doing various activities. Then from there, we made our way back up coast and we went to the Carrera area. We stayed at Cerro Lodge, which puts you right at the doorstep of a couple of key sites to go to Carrera National Park and then also going to see the Tarcoles River. And then from there, after we finished up, after 4 days, then we just went back to San Jose and then we flew out of San Jose. So on our way to Tirambina Lodge, when we got picked up by Costa Rica driver, and once again it was Leo. He likes us, so when he can, he fits us into his schedule, and he's the driver. So he picked us up at the Hampton, and our first stop was to go to La Paz Waterfall Gardens. It's a really nice place to go visit. They have, well, for one thing, they have a hummingbird garden, which was great for me. I was going to be looking for some of my targets. And they also have a lot of other exhibits there, and there's a nice walking trail that will take you past quite a few different waterfalls. So this is actually the La Paz waterfall that we're looking at there. And then after we wrapped up there, then Leo drove us a little further up the road, and I said, well, I wanted to stop at this soda. A soda is like a little drive-in diner. So I said I wanted to go here. He said I was already planning on taking you there, so that was great. Again, he's a birder, so he knows where birders are going to want to go. So we stopped in there for a quick lunch. We watched the feeders there. Um, didn't pick up anything in particular that I was looking for, but it was still a nice stop. So some of the hummingbirds that were at the La Paz Waterfall Gardens, we got violet saberwing here, really a nice hummingbird. What was really nice is while I was photographing this bird, this one popped into my peripheral vision, and this was one of my targets. This is a white-bellied mountain gem. And there were only 3 hummingbirds left in Costa Rica that I hadn't seen. This was one of them, white-bellied mountain gem. And then the other 2 were high priorities, for this trip in 2023. So I'll let the suspense build up on whether we got them all or not. But it was great that I was able to get this bird. I had planned on seeing it at Hotel Cayetales later on in the itinerary, but it was nice to get it off the books right off the bat. So our very first day in country, we managed to get one of my key targets. And there were a lot of other hummingbirds there too. So this is a purple-throated mountain gem. This is the female. So then after that lunch stop, we finally made our way to Tirambina Lodge. And it's kind of a funny situation. So GPS takes you to this parking lot, and it's just a gravel lot, and there's no signage that I noticed. Certainly nothing standing out. But then at the end of the parking lot, there was a station where you could wash your hands, you could clean your boots, and then there were these carts sitting there. So I loaded all of our stuff onto a cart and just decided to start walking towards where I figured reception was. And sure enough, they had a room for us. So that was good news. So it's a very nice place to stay, very pleasant. You can see the dining area here is very, very nice. This was the back patio off of our room, which was again very comfortable. So it met all my requirements, and we were here for 3 nights. So it was a wonderful situation. Right outside of our room on that patio, we had scaly-breasted hummingbird. What was neat was we did a little bird hike with one of the local lodge guides, and I told him that I was looking for bronzy hermit. So he pointed out very specific heliconias that hermit likes to utilize for feeding. And so he showed me where I could, just plant myself and wait for a bronzy hermit to show up. Well, those particular flowers looked kind of worn out, but I did notice that I had the exact same heliconia species right off of our back patio. So I just planted myself there and waited and waited. But the scaly-breasted hummingbird made it difficult because every other hummingbird that tried to get into this area, he kept chasing them off. But lo and behold, there he is, the bronzy hermit. Made a little brief appearance a couple of times. It's a terrible photograph, but it certainly is all diagnostic because of where the rufous band is. There's another species of hummingbird called um, or band-tailed barbthroat, and it looks almost identical to this, except the rufous would be on the outer edge and the black would be in the inner portion of the tail. So it was nice to have some photographic proof that I had bronzy hermit. So there we go, two down. We took care of another one of those high priority targets. One of the things that Melissa arranged for us while we were staying at Tirabina was to do a rafting trip. We went through a company called Green Rivers Rafting Company, and they came, picked us up, took us to the drop-off point down the river, and so the four of us, we had a nice rafting trip. Birding was so-so. We actually got this, I can't remember his name, but I want to say it's Kevin, actually. But he found out that we were birders, and so he right away wanted to take us on the river because he was a birder as well. So he was trying to show us a lot of birds. We did get some green ibis, which was nice to see. I think it was the only ones we had on the trip. We had a nice look at anhinga, a lot of things like motmots along the way. Um, but nothing spectacular. But it was just nice to be able to do a float trip and do something relaxing. So uh, what was nice about this property is they did have a very extensive hiking system. It was separated from where the actual lodge was, which is back in here near the road. Then you crossed the suspension bridge over the river, and then you were into the reserve. And there they had very extensive trails. So all you had to do is let the reception know that you were going to go into the reserve so that they could keep track of bodies, I guess. And we had a good time. So we hiked in there several times. Uh, Very beneficial to be staying here. 'Cause like I said, you could make your own fun, certainly. Here's a rufous motmot that we photographed very close to reception. So very cooperative bird. Here's a white-collared manakin. This was again off of my little courtyard in the back of our place. And when we were doing one of our hikes, we had a northern tamandua. I seem to be finding these more and more frequently, but it's a pretty cool animal. So it's basically an arboreal anteater. You can see he's got the anteater snout here. But they spend their time in the trees as opposed to those big anteaters out in the savannas. So our time was over at Tirabina. We actually celebrated my 68th birthday there. And the day that we were doing the transfer was the day that was actually my birthday. And so the driver that picked us up, Melissa, kept telling him that he should take us to a bakery. And so I was sitting in the front seat next to him, and he kept asking me if I wanted to stop at a bakery. I had no idea why he kept asking me this. I figured he probably had a friend who owned a bakery and he wanted to give the guy some business. So I just kept saying no, no, no. So I didn't get a birthday cake on my birthday. But we did make it to the Selva Biological Station. It was a place I've always wanted to go to. After many trips, I finally had the opportunity to get in here, and it was a great place. So it's been here forever. We were very fortunate that we got some of the newer lodgings. So we were in here, and I think the strikers were right next to us. But very nice rooms, very clean, very Spartan. There wasn't a whole lot going on in there, but once again, had everything I required. It had the hot and cold running water, um, and a nice comfortable bed. So that's all I need. The downside of this is that when we got there, it was early in the morning, and because we wanted to arrive early so we could do some a bird walk very early. So that meant that our driver had to just drop our bags at reception. Well, reception is about a kilometer away from here, and the only connection is basically a paved trail. So fortunately I found somebody with a bicycle and a little trailer, and so he carried he carried our bags up here for us. But the tricky part was that at dinner time, which is down by reception, it was dark by the time we were leaving, so you always had to walk that kilometer in the dark with just flashlights. We were only here for 2 nights, but we crammed a lot of activities into that short window. So here we are. So it was cafeteria style. You can see the lunch line is in here, but the surroundings were still very nice. So these are the strikers. This is Dennis Striker and Cass, and then this is Patrick O'Donnell, who I talked about earlier in the presentation. So we actually brought him in as a guest. The requirements that La Selva had to bring in a guide were outrageous. So we figured it was cheaper to pay for his room and invite him in just as a guest. And then he just went touring with us and happened to be our guide. So it all worked out very well. And we had a very nice time. And he found some good birds for me there, birds I wouldn't have found on my own, certainly. And while we were birding with him, then Cass and Melissa went out on a hike they had arranged with one of the local guides at the research facility. And so they got to see some pretty cool things. They had white tent making bats. These have got to be probably the cutest bats you will ever see. I don't think they come any better than that. These things look like um, they just look cuddly. And then not as cuddly as the eyelash pit viper, a very, very small snake, but a poisonous snake or venomous snake. And we were lucky enough to get that as well. So I missed out on the bats because Melissa didn't know how to relocate those, but we got some information on where the pit viper was, so we were able to go back with Patrick, and we did locate that. Some other cool things that happened while we were there. Melissa found these howler monkeys trying to cross the river on this bridge. So they're all lined up, waiting, taking their turn. It seemed like they were moving from one connection to the next, because you can see each one of them is at one of those, where on those connectors is. Here's broad-billed motmot, another cool bird to see. Lots of motmots. There's probably 5 or 6 different species of motmots in the country. So it was time to part ways with Dennis and Cass, and we moved on to Hotel Caetales. And the reason I wanted to stay here was because they had a lot of my hummingbird targets as potential here. So it's a little higher elevation, interesting place to be. Once again, very comfortable, a very nice room. This is the outside view. All the rooms were very secluded. And this is the dining area. So you had a lot of birds just right outside here. Very, very nice place to stay. When we were checking in, the owner was asking me if I was interested in birds or if I was a photographer. And I told him I was a birder. So he said, good. He said, because photographers are just nothing but trouble, which I thought was pretty funny. Uh, so it's a very nice place. Again, has all my requirements. They do have a trail system that we can keep occupied on. They even have their own waterfall here. You can kind of see the roof line of this nice pavilion that they have. It's an outdoor pavilion. And off to this side of it, hopefully you can see my cursor circling here. This is where they had a whole bunch of hummingbird feeders. And then on the other side of the pavilion, there was a feeding station for seed eaters and then also worm eaters. So it was a great place to hang out. I got the mountain gem here again that I was looking for. That was the main target that I picked up here. Here's some of the other hummingbirds that were available. We had green thorntail, black-bellied hummingbird. So both of those were around all the time. I probably had about 8 or 9 different species at this site. One of the nicest ones was green-fronted lancebill. So he provided a nice opportunity here. I was really happy with the way that turned out. And here's Jose. So he's the owner of the hotel. And since he knew I was a birder, he always alerted me when he was going to be feeding the birds so that I could come and watch. And so here he's putting out worms, and then he also had another station a little higher up here in the corner, which was more of a seed station. So coming in for the worms would be the scaled antpitta. This is an immature bird, but still a scaled antpitta nonetheless. There wasn't an adult male too, but he was a little more leery, didn't come right in. And there were also some other things around, like sooty-faced finch. We had white-eared ground sparrow as well. So some nice birds were coming into the feeding station. One of the things that we had elected to do when we were signing up to stay at Caetales was we lined up a 1 day trip out of the property and we wanted to go to El Copal because it was a place about an hour away, but it had a lot of key birds that I was hoping to find. And we did pick up a couple of my targets there. One of the ones that was most important to me was actually the snowcap, a hummingbird I had seen before, but Melissa had never seen it. So you can see it's just a beautiful place to go hiking, pretty decent trails, and we spent a lot of time in here. We had a nice lunch here, and as luck would have it, while we were here, I met the owner of a company that we were going to be using further on in the trip. He has a tour company that does boat trips on the Rio Tarcoles, and that was an area where we were definitely going to, make a concerted effort for the mangrove hummingbird. So it was nice. I got a chance to talk to him, and because of that, then he ended up being our personal guide when we went for that tour. So here's that snow cap. We did get that for Melissa. I was very happy that we could track that down for her. And after we finished up at Caetales, then we moved on to Savegre up in the mountains. So again, you're way up in the mountains here. The mountains elevation goes well above the lodge here, and we found that out because we signed up for a hike where they take you up to the very top of the Sierra de la Morita, and from there they just drop you off, and then you take the trail system all the way back down to the lodge, which is about a 3 hour plus hike down to the back down to the lodge. So lots of birding opportunities along the way, but when you start out at the top, it is very cold because this place gets cold at night. You can see there's a air conditioner slash heater here, and it was a good thing we had that. We had we had a bed for me, one for Melissa, and then one for the critters. So we were all set. No one was disappointed. And then we had our hot and cold running water. This was a very, very nice place to stay. I would highly recommend this. Birder or not birder, it's a wonderful place to stay. So we had signed up through the lodge for a tour where we did that hike from way up on the top of the mountain, and then we also signed up for an early morning bird tour. And on that, well, I guess that comes up in a minute. So they had some nice dining there. We had this more of a bar scene here for happy hour, and then there's also a very nice restaurant. Funny thing, when we were in this restaurant for lunch one day, uh, early on in the trip, I'd had a hamburger, and it was served with all sorts of slices of everything under the sun on that burger, and there was a fried egg on there, and I don't really like a fried egg on my hamburger. So I asked our waiter, I said, yeah, I'll have the hamburger. I said, does it come with an egg on it? And he just looked at me and said, what's an egg on it? So Melissa, in her broken Spanish, tried to explain to what what I was really asking. So it didn't have an egg on it. But right outside of our room, we had long-tailed silky flycatcher. So that was very, very nice. That's a key target, something Melissa needed to see. So I was really glad that we had it close at hand. And then we had this guy. So this was part of the early bird tour. And obviously this is digiscoping. But this is a resplendent quetzal, a bird I'd seen and Melissa had seen as well on multiple occasions. But it was nice to see this bird this way. There it goes. So that was great. So here's that hike that I was telling you about where they take you up to the very, very top of the mountains. And so the vegetation is very, very different up there because you've gained a lot of elevation in going up here. Um, I want to say you're in the range of around 11,000 feet at this point. And so from here you hike all the way down to the lodge. And again, it was, a few hours to do that. But along the way we had some cool birds. We did find some more quetzals in the forest on our own. And then we also had spotted wood quail. And here's the guide that we had when we did our bird hike. This is Raul, very, very knowledgeable, very friendly. He asked me at the very beginning in the morning, he said, so are you here to just, list a bunch of birds or do you have something specific to look for? So I gave him my very specific list and he immediately started working on it. And one of the key birds that I was hoping to find in here was Ochraceous peewee, and he did locate that for us. I don't have very good pictures of it, otherwise I'd include it in here because it was a pretty special bird to see. Birds everywhere, hummingbirds all around. They had many, many nice gardens right around the lodging area. So this is a scintillant hummingbird. They were everywhere. Talamanca hummingbird. was the part, not at the, actually a part of the lodge, but adjacent to the lodge, they had a little hummingbird garden. And so for a few dollars, you could go in there and enjoy the birds. So we went in there for probably over an hour, and just lots of hummingbirds to take pictures of. This is lesser violet ear. And this is interesting. So this is slaty flower piercer. And I've always thought, and it's reasonable to think this, when you see these guys, you see that really big hooked bill. Well, these are nectar thieves. And so they will actually bore into the side of the flower, and that's how they cheat and go past all the pollen, and they go directly in for the nectar. So it's kind of logical to assume that they're using that really hooked bill to create that little opening. But what I found out in watching this bird very closely, and I was able to capture it in this picture, so they actually use that hooked bill to grasp a hold of the flower, and it's actually puncturing with its lower mandible to create the opening. And once it creates the opening, then it will use its tongue to get the nectar out. So it's not the hooked bill actually making the holes, it's actually the lower mandible that's doing that. So that was kind of interesting to find that out. So after all of our fun up at Sevegre, I hated to go because it was so comfortable up there, and the nice cooler weather was great. But we headed down to the coast. We went to Dominical, which is right on the coast. Like I said, it's kind of a surfer's paradise. And where we were staying, it was maybe a 10-minute walk to town. So we just had that one little road to walk down, which was great because it was another opportunity to go birding. They did have a trail system. It was not super extensive, but we almost had it completely to ourselves. We were in the back of the property. You can get, once again, see a very nice room. Uh, this is what it looked like on the outside. So you're buried right in nature. So we had birds around us all the time. And that trail system started off just a bit to the right of where Melissa is standing. There was another trail that took off. And so that's where we did a lot of our birding. Here's a fiery billed Araceli. This is a bird that has kind of a restricted range within Costa Rica, and you have to be along the southern Pacific coast in order to get this bird. I think the only other time I had it was when we went to the Osa Peninsula, which would have been just a little further south than Dominical. One of the reasons for going to Dominical was because I wanted to get into the mangroves, and once again, we're looking for that mangrove hummingbird. So we arranged for a company to go out and do some kayaking. And since we were just a 10-minute walk to town, we were able to walk down there. We got all lined up with them. They put us in the river and or into the mangroves, and we went up and down and back and forth trying to find this mangrove hummingbird, but with no luck. They were there. The guide kept saying, "There goes one. There goes one." I heard that so many times. There goes one. I never saw one, so that was unfortunate. But after we finished up there, then again, Costa Rica drivers, they took us to our last stop, which was Hotel Cerro. And this is in a fantastic place. You're right by Carrera National Park. You're also by the Rio Tarcoles. Two great places to go. Rio Tarcoles, if you get into the mangroves, it's my last ditch effort to get that mangrove hummingbird. And in Carrera, there were some key birds to look for as well. So it's really looking forward to it. I knew that there would be a lot of extra hiking we could do aside from doing those tours in those two areas because they had a nice trail system. So when we got there, we found out that they had sold off a big chunk of the property and they no longer had a trail system. So all of our birding ended up being on the roadsides, which was fine because no one was on these roads and you could actually walk the roads to get to the Rio Tarcoles. It was about a 45-minute walk, but it was worth it. We had a nice time. So once again, they have very spacious rooms. It's not like touring in Europe. These are all really big rooms. Uh, they're basic, but they're nice and comfortable. So once again, I was happy. So there was a lot of wildlife, even though we were kind of confined to, just birding along the roads when we weren't on tour. And there were still lots of wildlife. So here we got a howler monkey with a baby. Then eventually we did um, go on our mangrove tour. So if you were to do this, there's a lot of places that'll go out on the Rio Tarcoles. Most of them are listed as crocodile kind of adventures. So you want to definitely do this one. This is the Mangrove Birding Journeys is the name of this company. And so they will actually go out looking seriously for birds as opposed to playing games with crocodiles and getting them to jump into the air and whatnot after chunks of chicken. So, so at any rate, this is a more ecotourist-minded operation, so I really enjoyed that. And there was no one else going out with him that day. And again, we were out with the owner, so he just took the two of us out. We had a private tour. It was very, very nice and very tranquil. No other boats are out there. I didn't manage to get the yellow-naped parrot, which was a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting that. So very nice pickup. And then while we were out in the boats, we did come across a colony of magnificent frigate birds. So that was kind of fun to see those. So it's if you go to the Galapagos, you see them even better. But this was still pretty nice to be able to see them like this with their with the throats all puffed out. So what do you know? There it is, the mangrove hummingbird. So this guy was so difficult to get. Uh, I saw him like 3 days in a row. And every time I saw him, I was not satisfied with the sighting. But here I finally got one where he was perched long enough there I could get a terrible picture. But I did count him then finally as my 220th hummingbird species. So I was quite happy. The day before I got that picture, this is where I was. So this was after our boat ride. Here's the owner. And so he's walking along on this boardwalk, and then he saw a mangrove hummingbird, and he motioned to me on where the bird was. And so as I was repositioning myself to try and see that bird, I never got to see it because my leg went right through this opening right here, all the way up to my knee. And it was jammed in there so tight that the guy had to actually pull me out of there. So it wasn't until the next day when the owner didn't have time to take us out, so we got delegated to another guy, Frankie here, and so he took us. He said, I'll get you that hummingbird." So we actually went into the mangroves during low tide and just kind of walked our way through, and we actually had probably 2 or 3 sightings of the mangrove hummingbird. And again, terrible picture because they're always up high, or at least for me, they were always up high where I couldn't get a good look at them. So one of the birds I picked up in Carrera, also with Frankie, was a streak-chested antpitta. So that was a nice pickup. Antpittas are always nice to pick up. Uh, Difficult birds at times when they're not coming to feeders for worms. Scarlet macaws seem to be everywhere. They seem to be making a big comeback in this part of Costa Rica. And of course, it wouldn't be a complete trip if you're going to the Rio Tarcoles. You've got to go to the bridge and see all the crocodiles. I don't know how many we saw. There was probably a couple dozen. And again, it was about a 45-minute walk from the lodge to get there. But you're going down these farm roads. So there's no one else on the roads, and you can bird all the way. Very, very nice. And when you get there, there are several eateries and diners. So they don't look like much from the outside, but you go inside, and the service is good, the food is good, and it's a comfortable place to have a lunch. So the next morning, the last morning, Frankie offered to come back out and bird with us, not as a part of the company, but we just paid him directly, and he came out and he insisted that I could get the collared forest falcon on this road. And I had heard a lot of reports through eBird and various communications that this was the place in Costa Rica to look for this bird. So it was early in the morning, about 5:30 in the morning, and the gate had not opened up yet, and I could already hear collared forest falcon on the other side. So finally, the watchman opened up the gate, and I go out there, and there's Frankie. So I said, "Was that you playing a recording?" He goes, "No." So I was actually already hearing collared forest falcons, and I've been oh so close to them so many times that I still was not, excited yet, because I thought, this is just going to be another one of these situations where all you see is some shadows and some movement in the bushes, and you never get the bird. Well, we walked and walked, and we tried probably for 5 different collared forest falcons before we finally found one, a young bird that probably he was too dumb to realize he's supposed to be elusive. He didn't read the fine print, and so he was interacting with a yellow-headed caracara, and he got out on an open perch where we could all have a great look at him. And by far, this ended up being my favorite bird of 2023. So anyway, after this, then we shot back up to San Jose. We spent a night at the Hampton and flew home the next day. So very, very good. opportunities. I've gone through a couple different itineraries that we have run, the last couple of years. So hopefully I've given you somewhat of an idea on, just how easy it is to bird down there and also how you can go about, setting up your trips. So I think that's all, and I think we can open things up for questions. Hello, everyone. So I don't know if we've got anything in chat. Doesn't look like it.
Yes, if you'd like to do Q&A, we'll just do it through chat as probably the most straightforward way, so we don't get
Okay.
a lot of audio issues. So yes, if you have questions for Dennis.
So far, thank you. That's good.
Got a question for, have you ever been to, I'm gonna butcher all these place names, Rara Avis in Costa Rica?
I have not. Um, I have not been there. Field Guides does run a tour there. It actually they go to it's Naturalista Lodge, is what I'm thinking of. So maybe this is a different one. But in any case, I haven't been there. I've covered a lot of ground, done some repeat things. Like I said, one trip was down to the Osa Peninsula, so that was pretty dedicated just to that one area. It was a short spring break kind of trip because Melissa and Justin were in school, so that was kind of a short trip. These other two are more extensive, the ones I just described, and well, you know where I went on those. So, and then I did a field guides trip where we did that birding the edges, and I showed you a map of what areas we covered on that. The very first trip, we kind of stayed in that same little central nutshell area also, because I was driving around. Again, that was in 1994. There was no GPS. The maps were terrible. There was no signage on the roads. And the way that if you got into a small town, it was no problem. There was usually one way in and one way out. And if you were in a big city, it was maddening. But if you were in the medium-sized towns, that's when it was really tough because you'd get to the town center. And so it was kind of like a loop, and you had spokes going off of the loop in different directions, but there was no signage. So all you could do is pick out one of the roads and start traveling down the road. But they have a big bus system, so there's always buses on the roads. And all you had to do is read the marquee on the front of the bus that said which towns they were serving, and then you could tell you were on the wrong road. So then you'd go back into the roulette wheel and pick another one and try a different spoke. And so we had to do that a couple of times. So so my experience in driving around in Costa Rica, that's why I hire Costa Rica drivers. It's just a lot easier. So it wasn't exactly an answer to your question, I guess, but it gave me some things I forgot to talk about earlier. Anything
All
else?
right. Yeah, we got a general question of, roughly how much do you tip the guides who are with you for a day? What's in your
Um,
experience?
well, certainly it has a lot to do with what kind of mood I'm in by the end of the day. But really, a good, everything's different, so it all depends on your situation. But usually, I'm giving them at least in the neighborhood of $10. If it's a full day, $10 per person.
Okay.
If it's just a morning, then you would do half of that.
Okay. What's staying on the costs theme, what is a reasonable ballpark figure or range for a budget for a 2-week trip similar to what you're describing?
I can't answer that. If Melissa was here, she's my chief financial officer. She would probably know that off the top of her head. Not super expensive. It's cheaper than going through um, one of the tour companies or what have you. It's going to depend on where you're staying. Food is pretty much uniform across the board. So you're always going to find, unless you're in a lodge that is in the middle of nowhere and you have no, you're a captive audience and you might have expensive dining there. Um, but you just kind of work your way through that. So I can't really give you a specific number for a 2-week trip, but it's going to be certainly cheaper than if you go through, one of the tour companies. I can say that much.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess as an additional commentary, yeah, that's probably a good thing to start from is see what the tour companies are charging and knock something off of that. Um, Okay. Drive times. How much time are you spending driving, going spot to spot?
Well, again, that depends. You're going to be moving around the country. It's not like being here in DuPage County where you look at a map and say, oh, it's only 12 miles. You know, I had to do a trip that trip back in '94. We had a road that we had to go up into the mountains, and I think it was like under 30 miles we were traveling, and it took us hours. I mean, I was just crawling on this road, trying to dodge big potholes, and I was driving a little Nissan Sentra. So all I could think about the whole time I was driving was that we're going to bottom out, and I'm going to take out the gas tank or the oil tank. So that was driving me crazy. But the roads are much better now. Um, but to do some of those runs that we did, if you can think back to those maps that I was showing you, none of those routes took more than most of them were an hour, sometimes approaching 2 hours. The one that I can think of off the top of my head is when we went from La Salva to Caetales. That was kind of a long run and there was no real direct way. So that took over 2 hours. But most of the other ones were less than 2 hours, probably closer to an hour to make some of those drives.
Okay. Is there anybody else that's a question? Going once, going twice. All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you, Dennis. Thank you again for
Okay.
putting this together. Thank you everybody for coming this evening. Because people coming by is and coming to these presentations is a big part of helping keep this going. So hopefully y'all enjoyed. There will be, I see the note at the bottom. Yes, there will be a recording available. We have been recording this, so it'll go up on the YouTube page in the near future. And otherwise, again, thanks, Dennis.
So you can go
And
back and look, you can review things, replay it, and then you can grab some of those contact information that I had put out there. So some of the WhatsApp numbers, you can easily grab them if you watch the video, or that email address for Patrick O'Donnell. Things like that you can easily pick up just kind of by spinning through the video. And I just highly recommend it if you haven't gone out of the country and you want to try some tropical birding, Costa Rica is a great place to start. As I mentioned in the beginning, um, you get some exposure to families that you would be new to you, but none of those groupings are that huge. It's not like going down into Amazonia. Some of the trips that we've done um, in Ecuador and Peru, we end up with studies lists that are 750 species. Well, that's pretty extensive. So for a trip like this, when I've been putting these together, we're probably 300 or less on a study list. So that's a lot easier to manage. So, but I highly recommend going. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I think everybody should leave the country and just, experience things outside of the US of A. It just gives you a different perspective on a lot of things. So anyway, thanks a lot for listening to me tonight, and we'll see you out birding sometime in DuPage County.
Mhm. All right. Have a nice evening, everybody.